What's up guys, and welcome back to a Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire video. In this video I'm covering the possibility of Primal Forms being added to more legendaries than just Groudon and Kyogre. So, obviously, in the new games, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we are getting Primal Forms of Groudon and Kyogre through a process called Primal Reversion, or something to that effect, where they revert to their states they were in the prehistoric times when generally they had more power. So as you can tell by the designs, they're glowing, they've got more power, because back in the old days, Groudon and Kyogre, they shaped the world. Groudon created land, Kyogre had huge, making seas go around, whatever, everything like that. Whereas when we see them in their normal forms, they don't quite have that much power, whereas in their primal forms, that's exactly what they have. So somewhere along the lines, they have they've lost this power somehow. Doesn't necessarily mean it can be got back, but they've lost it in some way or some form. Maybe just over time, or maybe through a certain process. I did talk about this in my plot line video for Omega Alpha Sapphire, thinking about how the primal forms are going to be taken into consideration there, talking about how possibly when Rayquaza calmed them down, and to begin with, it took their primal powers, let's call them, and put them in the orbs. So that's the possibility there, and then obviously once you give the orbs back to them, then you can, you get your primal forms back. But I'm going to go through the legendary Pokemon that I think can get, or might be able to possibly get, primal forms if they were to expand out to other legends. There's no guarantee they are going to. They could just keep them just for Groudon and Kyogre, but they could spread them out. They could make it a legendary only thing. They could also move it to be other Pokemon too. For example, people have asked for primal forms of Kabutops, Omastar, stuff like that, since obviously they are prehistoric Pokemon, so there's a possibility there. I'll most likely be talking about that in another video, but today we're focusing just on legendaries, because in my opinion I think it's just going to be, if they do spread it out, it will just be legendaries, but that's just me, so who knows. Anyway, let's go on to look at the Pokemon that I think might be able to get primal forms. First up we have Rayquaza. Now this is sort of a given, because obviously if they're going to get Groudon and Kyogre ones, there's a huge possibility they may have Rayquaza one as well. I sort of talked about this in my plotline video as well, saying when Rayquaza, for example, took their powers and put them in the orbs, it had to do the same thing to itself, and it lost its power in that sense, or it lost its judgment power and its calming power, whatever you want to call it. But a primal Rayquaza is a very big possibility in my opinion. It could happen. If they give Groudon and Kyogre one, they may very well give Rayquaza one. It would only make sense, to be honest, because they are a trio. So yeah, there's not much else to say for Rayquaza, because that's pretty much it. Now, this isn't really I don't know what I'd call it. It's not really a looking at ones that might be possible. It's looking at one everyone thinks is sort of going to be coming in now. So we have Dialga, and obviously in the Mystery Dungeon games we had Primal Dialga, who was a form of Dialga who went mad pretty much because time was messing up or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure of the details. Anyway, you can see Primal Dialga here. It looks exactly the same as normal Dialga, apart from the fact it's got glowing lines, a red orb, red jewel, whatever you want to call it. There's not a whole lot of change from it. So a lot of people, when the forms for Primal Groudon, Primal Kyogre were sort of announced, the names were announced, everyone sort of thought straight away, Primal Dialga. That thing, Primal Dialga, they're obviously maybe thinking that Primal Dialga is going to end up being put into the game, that it's going to be, as want for a better term, canonized, as in made canon with the rest of the series, because obviously it's just part of the Mystery Dungeon series, which is taking place in a whole different universe, or a different part of the Pokemon universe, where obviously just Pokemon talk, they live on their own sort of thing. Whereas if they put Primal Dialga in the main games, they would canonize it, whereas it would make it canon. I don't know if you guys have heard that expression before. I'm sure a lot of you will have. Anyway, but yeah, a lot of people think that since Groudon and Kyogre being primal, that Dialga will eventually, or Primal Dialga, will eventually put into the games as well. However, there is one big hitch with this. In the Japanese games, the name for Primal Dialga is Dark Dialga, and in the Japanese games, the Japanese versions, the name for Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon is Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon. So even though they're the same names in the English versions, in the Japanese versions they are different names. So unfortunately, Primal Dialga is not related to Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon. So it's very unlikely to actually be put into the games. So sorry for everyone that's hoping for Primal Dialga to put in the games, but it's just not going to happen really. Next Pokemon looking at, this actually the Pokemon sort of gave me the idea to this video, is Regigigas. Now, everyone knows about Regigigas. It's a very mediocre legendary. It has the ability to slow start, which means for 5 turns its attack and its speed are halved, which means it can't do anything really. It means your opponent has 5 turns to do whatever they want to set up on you, to get ready to switch around, whatever really. Regigigas is really just quite it's useless almost. It's not useless, but it's very underpowered. It's far underpowered what it could be with the attack stat. It has like 116 attack, but obviously for the first 5 turns, its attack is only 80. If you can get past the 5 turns for slow start and actually use it, then you're just going to wreck lives with Regigigas, but unfortunately, those 5 turns are what usually let people down using Regigigas. So, what would a Primal Regigigas be about? Well, obviously if we were reverting to what it would be back in its sort of the past, when we always find Regigigas in the game, it was always sleeping, it's always hibernating, and then you wake it up by bringing in the 3 Regis. So what I think would be sort of how it would be happening is Regigigas used to have a lot more power than it does now. There are stories about how it towed continents around using ropes, so obviously it was very powerful in that sense. It created the 3 Regis itself, which means it's very powerful there as well, but then it's got a slow start, you know, so what I think is it did the continent stuff, it did the Regis, and then it went to sleep. And over that time, when it was sleeping, it lost all its power, its power slowly seeped away. So what would Primal Regigigas be all about? Well, obviously it would have a different ability from Slow Start. It would not have Slow Start. A lot of people have suggested Mega Regigigas or something along those lines having huge power, which would be absolutely crazy because then its attack stat would jump to 320, but it's a possibility. Game Freak might be that stupid. Or, you know, another different sort of, I don't know what you call it, another ability, you know? It wouldn't have Slow Start anymore, which would make it a lot more usable. As you can see, the design here is actually floating, you know, it's sort of slightly changed around as well. Looks pretty cool. This is actually a design for a Mega Regigigas rather than a Primal Regigigas, but it's a similar sort of concept there. But I very like the idea of Regigigas, you know, having some Primal Reversion and then sort of powering up, being very useful along those lines. I just like the idea pretty much. Next Pokemon I have an idea for a Primal Reversion is Arceus. Yes, Arceus, the god Pokemon, pretty much. The creator of the Pokemon universe. So we're told Arceus created the Pokemon universe, created the Creation Trio, the Lake Trio, you know, it most likely created Mew as well. We don't know this, but it could have created Mew, and Mew eventually evolved into all the other Pokemon, something along those lines, but it's very powerful. It created the universe. We see in the movies that obviously it's very powerful, or the movie it's in, rather. But generally, yeah. But however, in the game, in games, its base stats just 120 over the board. It's nothing too amazing, really. Nothing out of this world. It's very easy to take down with other Pokemon, sort of thing. So maybe if Arceus had a Primal Reversion, a Primal form, which reverted it back to the power it had when it was creating the universe. This would make it much more powerful, very overpowered indeed, so it would maybe even get banned from Ubers sort of thing, but it would make it worthy of the title of God of the Pokemon universe, creator of the Pokemon universe, whatever you want to, sort of phrase you want to use there. And obviously this design here isn't my favourite one that was out there, but it's the one I've got anyway. But you guys get what I mean there, seeing Arceus as sort of similar to Regigigas and also Groudon and Kyogre. They used to have power, they're huge things, but in their normal forms we see now, they don't seem to have that same power. Whereas if they had their Primal Reversion, they would be ultimately powerful. Very, very interesting and cool to think about in my opinion. That's what I think for Arceus, so let's move on to the next Pokemon, which is, well, it's Kyurem, but it's also Kyurem, Reshiram and Zekrom as well. Now guys, if you don't know the lore or the story behind Kyurem, Reshiram, Zekrom, they basically came from a Dragonstone, I'm pretty sure, or an original dragon. And then this original dragon was used by 2 brothers who were fighting for a cause, but they had slightly different sort of aims, I guess. One of them I think was going for truth, but the other one was going for ideals. And this caused the original dragon to split in 2, forming Reshiram and Zekrom. But when this original dragon split into the 2, it also had an empty space behind, sort of thing. And this empty space was Kyurem. Because if you guys don't know, they're based on the Tao, which are, you know, sort of yin yang, and then the emptiness, the absence of yin and yang, which is what Kyurem is based off of. So that sort of links into the story there. So maybe if you used Primal Reversion rather, with Kyurem, you get back to the original dragon. Maybe, you know, obviously the stone or whatever you want to, you know, call it for to get Kyurem to Primal Revert is actually the 2 stones, the 2 orbs that you use for Reshiram and Zekrom. Because in Black to White or whatever, there are stones to summon Reshiram and Zekrom, or stones that are related to them. So maybe if you found those stones in the game, maybe you couldn't actually revive Reshiram and Zekrom from them. maybe they were just sort of the powers of them. Maybe if they combine them together, give it to Kyurem, and then it can Primal Revert to the original Dragon form, because then we both have, you'd have Kyurem, and then you'd have your Truth and your Ideals, because you're told in some of, I think, Kyurem's Pokédex entries that it's waiting for a trainer to fulfill its Truth and Ideals. So give it the power of Truth and the power of Ideals, and then it'll be able to Primal Revert into the original Dragon. The design you see here isn't the most brilliant, because all it is basically is parts of each of them. I assume it would be a sort of a new design of its own, but it's a possibility anyway. It still looks pretty cool, this design. I quite like it a lot. But that's my idea for Primal Reversion of Kyurem there. Yes, so then on to the last Pokemon I think, or last Legendary I think, might be able to Primal Revert is Genesect. Reason for this being, obviously it is an ancient Pokemon, it's, you know, sort of on par with the fossil Pokemon sort of thing. However, it has been sort of adapted via by Team Plasma, which makes it slightly different, because obviously the design you see here for the Primal Reversion is sort of using just, it's actually a Mega Genesect design rather than a Primal Reversion design, but it's still very similar in that sense, I guess. The problem with Primal Reversion for Genesect though is, would it still have all its armor, or would it shed its armor and have just the underbody, I guess? And would that make it less powerful or more powerful, sort of thing? Because a lot, obviously, there's the theory that Genesect is Kabutops revived and modified by Team Plasma, but who knows? So how would that really work for Primal Reversion of Genesect? You know, what you got to think about that, guys. You got to think about that there. Anyway, I can't say much more about Genesect because it was a very strange Pokemon to talk about Primal Reversion for, but that's really it for this video, guys. Let me know what Pokemon I've talked about today you think might be able to Primal Revert, or go through Primal Reversion, or have Primal Forms. Obviously we started off with Rayquaza, then we moved on to Dialga, which, as I said, is not going to get one, so, you know, just sort of leave feedback about that down below, I guess. Then we have Regigigas, also followed by Arceus, Kyurem and the Tau Trio, or Kyurem, Reshiram, Zekrom, and then finally Genesect. Let me know if any of those are possible down below, and also just let me know what you think about Primal Reversion in general. Are they going to keep it just on Groudon and Kyogre, or are they going to expand it to other legendaries, are they going to expand it to other Pokemon? Yeah, just let me know down in the comment section below, guys, and I guess I'll be seeing you when... I guess I'll be seeing the comments when the video's up. Anyway, I guess I'll be seeing you soon, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you did, and I guess I'll be seeing you next time, guys. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.